Do you have a hard time showing your emotions? Are you a hyper vigilant and independent perfectionist? Do you over apologize for things that really weren't even your fault and at the same time have difficulty forgiving yourself for even the smallest of mistakes? Are you so scared of conflict that you completely avoid it at all costs? Do you tend to overshare with complete strangers and then overthink it and immediately regret everything you just said? Do you feel bad for just existing? Well, then congratulations, my friend. You have a childhood trauma.
Here are a few signs that your parents are toxic. And parents, if you watch this and for some reason get offended, it's about you. They are overly critical. Yes, people are going to make mistakes, and it's a parent's job to teach a child that that thing is a mistake, but there's a limit to this, and going past that limit can fuck with your kid's self-esteem for life. They know your boundaries, but ignore them. And this could be as simple as just knocking on a door before entering a room, which is perfectly reasonable, but they have this mindset of, well, I'm the parent, you're the child, and I can do whatever I want in my house. They project their negativity onto you. The parent might not like something about themselves, and when they see it in their kid, instead of realizing that it's from them, they just blame and insult the kid who's still developing and gonna believe all of it. They dump their emotions onto you. The parent is supposed to be the supporting, guiding, and comforting figure for the child, not the other way around. They blame you for everything, like it's your fault for being born and not theirs. Parents did this, they were kind of shitty, and you should make sure that you don't take this shitty thing with you and do it to your kid. Teasing you about your romantic interest, okay? This shit isn't cool, and it only kills your confidence and then delays your emotional growth. Telling your embarrassing childhood stories as entertainment or dinner party talk, using your humiliation to make their friends laugh, only builds resentment and breaks trust. Treating you like a therapist. It's okay to talk about some worries, but when they're constantly complaining about every little problem to you, it's emotionally draining, and the full fallout won't even hit you until like 10, 20 years down the line. Parents should support their kids, not the other way around. I think we all need just one big group therapy session. What do you guys think? Things you inherited from your parents that you probably didn't think about. Insomnia. Yeah, if you have trouble sleeping at night, you can probably just blame that on your mom, but don't be too mad about it because she can't sleep either. Your musical ability. Tone deafness and perfect pitch are both genetic. Your ability to trust others. Yes, trust issues can be a result of environmental factors, but a 2017 study done on twins proves that it's also inherited. Let's talk about mommy issues really quick, okay? This is a term that comes from when somebody has emotional or psychological problems stemming from a dysfunctional relationship with their mother. And if you have mommy issues, this can really disrupt when you try to form romantic or even platonic relationships in your adult life. Now, in men, this can look like somebody who is emotionally distant. They have a hard time expressing their feelings. They could be controlling or possessive because they have a fear of losing people and just hold on to them a little bit too tight. And it could also just be that this man has a hard time trusting women, especially women who have authority. Now, women with mommy issues usually have a lot of insecurities, low self-esteem, and some sort of fear of abandonment, which causes them to go and seek out maternal validation from people who are not their mother, people like bosses, teachers, maybe a friend's mom. But at the same time, they also have a really hard time trusting women, which leads to a lot of rejection. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can go about fixing mommy issues, but this involves a lot of shadow work and healing your inner child that most people just aren't willing to do.
3 ways that childhood trauma shows up in adulthood: dissociation and disconnection from yourself. You probably learned how to dissociate early on when you grew up in that chaotic environment that required you to have some sort of disconnection to survive. You struggle with a lack of identity and you don't know too much about yourself. Your developmental years were focused on survival rather than really getting to know the world and yourself. And number 3, difficulty being on your own or hyper independence. You either didn't learn to trust yourself and depend on yourself, or because you learned that the only person you can depend on is yourself. Why does childhood trauma show up as extreme panic or anxiety in adulthood? When we experience a traumatic or stressful event, our body goes into the fight, flight, or freeze responses. Typically, when that threat is over, we'll go back to normal functioning without the need to have these responses present. In cases of severe trauma or chronic trauma throughout childhood, our body learns that the world is not a safe place and therefore remains in one of these 3 responses. This becomes our normal way of functioning. Our nervous system starts perceiving threats where there aren't any. Everything becomes a trigger, even when you don't recognize what those triggers are. It could be something as small as a scent or a sound or even a thought that is passing that you don't even notice, leading to a heightened baseline for anxiety and therefore more easily triggered.
The impact of parental treatment during childhood on adult struggles is a complex and debated topic. While positive and nurturing parenting can foster emotional well-being, resilience, and healthy self-esteem in children, conversely, neglect, abuse, or inconsistent parenting can lead to emotional scars and challenges in adulthood.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another program, Speak Your Mind. My name is Pastor Giovanni, and we're going to be together in this program to bring you guys another topic. And you who watch us here in Canada, Toronto, anywhere in the world, have the opportunity also to let us in and speak your mind. Our lines are already open, so the phone number that's going to appear right there on the bottom, you can call it 877-785-8700 or through WhatsApp 437-233-9815. I want to hear what you have to say. Hey, what is the topic? Today, we are talking about none other than parents and childhood trauma. To what extent do you think parents play or if they're responsible for childhood trauma? I am not by myself, but today I have with me Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Pastor. How are you?
I'm good. What do we have?
So today we are having our topic about childhood trauma, and we also have anyone that is welcome to give a call or even give a comment about the situation they're going through. Our phone number is on the screen, also our WhatsApp. Also, we do have our poll that you can scan the QR code and to check it out. Also, give your opinion, and at the end of the program, we will be showing who is the winner of the poll.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I already think I have somebody on the line, Junior. Let's see if we can connect him right now. Hello, Junior, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Junior, we're asking everybody the following about childhood trauma. To what extent do you think, Junior, parents are responsible for the trauma that children end up having?
Oh, yeah, it's that's for sure. It happens because many of the parents that suffer as well as kids, they carry those same problems, and the way they were brought up, they think that it's the same way. For example, if they were hit because of disobedience, or maybe they were treated with disrespect, or they heard a lot of cussing at home, they take that to their kids, and because of that, the kids, they suffer with trauma, and it continues, and so it's something that exists.
Now, Junior, do you agree with the following mindset that a parent who probably grew up being hit, being disciplined, as we probably majority or some of us can relate, being hit with the belt, whatever the case is, anything that was closest to you, do you agree with parents showing that or doing that to their kids because that's the way they learn? Do you think that still functions?
Well, it all depends, because nowadays, I guess you can see that the generations are kind of changing now, where the youths are more, I guess you can say, sentimental, and more technology. Back then it was I guess you can say they would use a bell, they would use a stick, whatever they could find, and nowadays you try to do that and they call the cops on you. So it depends to what extent, and depending on the household, and depending on how the child is too, sometimes it can be resolved with words, and it depends on how the tone of the voice is as well.
Now, Junior, last question. When you grew up, was there any type of trauma that you had? Whether it doesn't necessarily have to be about discipline, but anything that maybe you were marked or even traumatized because of your parents?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I got beat. I was the one that got beat. So,
thank you.
Yeah, nowadays you can't do that. Seeing other kids nowadays, they fight back. I couldn't fight back. I couldn't speak back. So of course I carried that as a trauma. You're already thinking that you get home and you're gonna get hit, or you do something wrong. You already know, oh, I'm gonna get it as soon as I get home. or my mom finds out, that's it. So it definitely marked me, and it made me take other decisions too. So for sure that it
So,
happened.
so you basically were growing up with, because of that, you kind of developed a different type of mentality. Do you think now, years later, that's something that helped you, or that's something that maybe in the past held you down?
Oh yeah, it helped me a lot. During the moment, nobody likes it. I hated it. I would run away. I'll do anything to run and hide. My mom would throw a shoe or a sandal to my head. She had really good aim. She would hit me, but whatever. But now thinking about that, it was my fault too. The way she was brought up was way much more severe. So I guess she toned it down on me. She had mercy, I guess, to an extent, but it helped out a lot for sure because nowadays you can't even say anything because they want to go at you.
And
So it helped out a lot.
just to clarify, Junior, we are not condoning physical violence, correct? We're not. We're not.
No, absolutely not. If there's moms that are saying, "Oh, now I have a reason to do the same thing," no, it's not for the mom or dad to give them that edge and say, "Oh, I heard it on the TV, I'm gonna do it." No, every case is different. Every household is different. Every child is different. I was rebellious. I admit, I was a headache. So
Junior,
I understand completely.
Thank you so much for speaking your mind, for sharing your opinion. Have a good night, okay?
All right, thank you.
Take care. You can keep giving us a call right now, 877-785-8700. Miss Rachel, do we have any comments coming in yet?
Yes, Pastor, we do have some comments. We already got someone named Christina who says, if they admit that you experienced trauma as a child, then they have to admit that they didn't protect you as a child and that they failed as parents. And that is a hard thing for a parent to do. Admit that they failed as a parent and that they couldn't protect their child from harm, or that they themselves are the ones that harmed you and are harming you even now. And we also have Penny saying, I believe it's out of fear and emotional immaturity. I did the same thing to my son, and it was because I hadn't acknowledged my own trauma at this time either. When I first started my own personal exploration 7 years ago, I was speaking to my son about the effects of my childhood, and he started telling me about his. I was shocked, I was terrified, and I thought I'd done all I could do to help him, but I realized I only made it worse. As you see, a lot of people are probably going through this situation. It's sometimes it is the parent that they have to acknowledge that they have a trauma that they went through, and sometimes it reflects when they are raising their kids and they don't know how to explain themselves in that situation.
And again, Ms. Rachel, I'm sorry to cut you off. When we say trauma, yes, majority will take it into a negative connotation, but maybe you have been marked or even traumatized with something good. We heard Junior say that in the end, he actually thanks his mom. It's something that helped him out, no, later on in the future. And this person can continue voting on our poll, right, Miss Rachel?
Yeah, they can definitely scan the QR code on the screen, and that takes us straight to our poll on Telegram. And they're more than free to give a vote. And then at the end, we will be giving the final result of it.
One of the things that I always remember when we speak about topics like this, growing up, my parents always made a joke about clowns. And as I grew up, I don't know why, I ended up having this fear of clowns. Again, I'm not scared of clowns anymore. So if my producers pull out a clown mask, I promise I won't run away. But let's go to our next video before we continue answering your calls and reading your comments, and we'll be right back.
We all know that good parenting involves unconditional love and support. It was even found that affection can affect brain development. So it's not just touchy-feely stuff. Unfortunately, not all parents provide this kind of nurturing. Instead, they exhibit behaviors that are downright toxic and sabotage the possibility of a healthy, fulfilling relationship with their children. Wondering what those things are? Here, let's take a look. Number 1, they project their negativity onto you. This is when the parent places things they dislike or can't face about themselves onto their children. So instead of the parent saying, I'm disappointed in myself, they persistently tell their child that life is unfair, that the child is unlucky, or maybe even tell the child they're unworthy, so they should expect to fail. This is incredibly damaging, as the child who is still developing takes the parent's words as absolute truth and they'll start to embody those negative projections. Number 2, they show little to no empathy. Consider if, when going to your parent for help with a problem or in grief, you hear something like, "Why is everything always about you?" Or, "No one ever cares about the parent. It's only your needs that are important, right?" The parent might even be dismissive of your concern and change the subject to something they deem important, meaning something to fulfill their own needs, not yours. They don't think, consider, or really care about how you or other people feel. It's all about them. And the concept of other people having equally valid feelings is incomprehensible. This is terrible, as this sends a clear message that they simply don't care for the child as an individual. Number 3, they're overly critical. Yes, we make mistakes, and yes, part of parenting is to make the child aware that something is a mistake in the first place so they can learn. There is a limit, though, before it turns into abuse. Overly critical is when the child has tried repeatedly to correct things or improve, yet they're still offensively wrong. An example could be, "You only got 80%, you were lazy and didn't study," which leads to, "You only got 90%? Do I have an idiot for a child?" And even at 100, what? The teacher finally took pity on you? Or, "So you got 100, but you neglected your chores. If you can't do both, you're just useless." So the child grows up believing they're never good enough. Maybe they're defective, or maybe they deserve to be treated badly. Number 4, despite knowing your boundaries, they ignore them. Ever been just relaxing quietly in your room and your parent just barges in with no warning? Or maybe out of the blue, they force advice on you about something you never even hinted to them you needed or wanted help with. And if you dare to say something about it, you likely get the, "I'm the parent, so I have the right to." No, this is ridiculous. Unless the child is so young that they can't do basic functions for themselves yet. Any healthy relationship must include personal boundaries that are respected by all parties. A one-off could be that they didn't know or there was some sort of emergency. A repeated offense, especially if some excuse of "because I'm the parent" is given, means they don't respect you as a person, and that is not healthy. Number 5, they insult you to hurt you. This is different from a joke burn war, where it's been firmly established by all that it's a fake insult for humor. This is the kind where you're humiliated or shamed, often for no reason or perhaps as a response to an accomplishment you've shared. They might even do this in front of others just to dig even deeper. This is not tough love to keep you humble. This is flat-out abuse that makes the child feel alienated, anxious, or depressed. The child's whole future outlook could be shackled with low self-esteem. Number 6, you are always the reason for anything negative, even if you're actually not. Ever been blamed for being born? You know, comments like, "You ruined my life. I couldn't reach my goals because I had to raise you." Or maybe somehow everything that is inconvenient in your life is your fault. Like you're some sort of supernatural harbinger of doom affecting events in places you've never even seen. Common sense goes out the window and they take everything they're dissatisfied with and somehow make it your doing. Which, by the way, is 99.99% impossible. If you can relate to this, you have dysfunctional parents. Really, it's them, not you. And number 7, they are all take and no give. We don't mean things like money or gifts, although that could be part of it. This is like those situations where a parent, instead of going to a qualified counselor or even an adult friend, decides to emotionally dump on their 12-year-old instead. All the child knows is that the parent is upset, so they try to comfort them as best they can. A child is defined as a child here because their brains haven't developed to maturity yet. They should not and cannot handle that kind of responsibility in a healthy way. It's supposed to be the parent supporting, guiding, and comforting the child. Making the child be the parent is a real phenomenon called, unsurprisingly, parentification. And it also means that when the child is in need of comfort, the parent doesn't reciprocate. Healing yourself from toxic parenting is in your power. You and only you have control of your own feelings and attitudes. Your parents are, likewise, the only ones who can control and change their own feelings and attitudes. It's time to free yourself from that burden if you believe it's your fault they aren't being better people, because it isn't. You are never obligated to be abused. nor are you obligated to take on your parents' issues that they've ignored in themselves. Look out for yourself and be someone you like and respect. We know you can do it. Did you recognize any of these signs? Has this video changed the way you see things that have happened in the past? Please feel free to discuss below, and we'll see you soon.
437-233-9815. We have another caller, Edith Guerrero. Let's see if we can connect her now. Miss Edith, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Miss Edith, I believe you are a super mom, correct?
I try.
Miss,
Sometimes it doesn't feel like that.
yeah, you are, and so then you would be the ideal person to ask with our topic about childhood trauma. To what extent do you think a parent is responsible for childhood trauma in their kid?
I have to admit that I think a parent is very responsible because, I mean, kids, they can't think for themselves yet. And we have them from the very early years when they're growing up and developing their thinking skills, their habits and everything. So, I mean, practically we're introducing them to this new world, and everything they learn is from us. If they want to change their habits and all that stuff, it's going to be once they become an adult or whenever they can control their emotions, but that's going to take a long time.
Now, Ms. Edith, what would you say then to children who they don't have their parents around? Do you think their parents either being busy plays a negative part in them growing up?
I think there's there's a piece that the child, I guess, develops on his own, and I'm not sure what leads to them believing in being mature, in being compassionate, or understanding that maybe my parent is not here and I have to behave. Like, I can give you the example with my sister and me. There was that big difference growing up. My parents were always working and all that stuff, and I understood the reasoning behind them not being with us. They had to work, they had to provide, and I was calm. I didn't really ask for their love. However, my sister, on the other hand, even though we grew up in the same environment, she was very needy, and she always blamed them for not being there. She tried like suicide because she wanted the attention and all this stuff. So I can't really tell you like what is it, what was the turning point, or what made her different than me.
Now, Miss Edith, you are a mom of, how old is your child?
He's 3. He just turned 3 a couple of months ago.
Now, Miss, in these years that you have with him, is there something that you do now that maybe, and this is not being negative, but maybe was missing as you were growing up?
Oh yeah, so many things. I mean, I understand. My mom is great and everything. I'm not going to complain about her, how she...
And we're live and we're
raised me up.
streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Tuber, so I would prefer you not to.
Yeah. But I mean, with the video that you guys played a little while ago, I mean, that it was never enough. That could be a toxic trait. I mean, it happens. But I try not to do that with my son. Like, instead of telling him that whatever he did is not good enough or whatever, even if he's only 3, I would tell him, oh, great work. I would try and emphasize the good parts. And I don't really follow the I'm the parent, so you must obey style. I usually explain it to him, even though I know it might sound crazy because he's really young. But I like to believe that he understands me and that he's thinking for himself. And when he has to, or when I ask him to not do something, I'll explain why. And sometimes he looks at me like he understands me and he doesn't do it. So I hope I'm doing the right thing.
Now, Ms. Edith, getting on to my last couple of questions, I asked you if you do something now that maybe wasn't done to you. Is there something that you do as you raise your child that maybe your mom did with you?
Something that I do is teach them the value of family, of hard work, I guess you can say. Not just give him things without him having to, I don't want to say earn, but at least to show some interest or some consideration. so that he knows that it doesn't come easily, that it would be nice for him to do his part and then reap the benefits.
And now, my last question. You were talking about your sister. You were talking about yourself. How your sister, had been someone who was a little bit more needy. Do you think there's a way that a person or even a child who's growing up now, maybe the parent doesn't have the resources to give their child what they want? Do you think that's automatically going to put something negative or create that trauma in said child? Or do you think even them not having resources, it can have a good outcome?
No, I think even if they don't have all the resources, I mean, you don't need money, or you don't need you don't need money to buy love or to show your affection or to show up at night, give them a kiss, read them a story, anything just to make them feel like they are being understood or being heard.
Mrs. Edith,
right now, my child wants me to smell his foot. I mean, with that, it makes him more than.
Are you smelling his foot as we speak right now?
Yes.
I heard you inhale a little extra. Spoken like a true super mom. Miss Edith, thank you so much for speaking your mind. Have a good night, okay?
Okay, thank you. You guys
Take
too.
care. 877-785-8700. Mrs. Rachel, would you ever ask your mom to smell your foot? No? No way? There we go. Come back. My studio is they're a little on edge because of Halloween. We apologize. Ms. Rachel, would you ever ask your mom to smell your foot the way Miss Edith's kid would?
I don't think
You're
now.
turning a little red now.
I don't think now, Pastor, but I think when I was little, I think I used to.
Do we have any comments?
We do, Pastor. We do have Charlene that says, recently I was talking to my mother and I brought up the childhood trauma that happened to me and my sisters. One of my sisters and I had recently been talking about it, and I brought it up what our discussion had been to our mother. She immediately shut me down and asked why I have to bring such horrible things and why can't the past stay in the past. My mother doesn't like to talk about our childhood because she feels as though she failed us. In most cases, I feel like that's most parents that feel in that situation. They don't want to talk about their past because they might realize that they have failed. Then we also have Maya saying, parents have to admit that they did something wrong as a parent if they admit that the child wasn't always happy or had bad experiences. They don't want to take any blame or feel blamed or see themselves in a bad light. It can be hard to admit to do anything wrong as a parent towards a child, particularly if you have a view that your child owe you everything and you feel you have authority over them. So as you see, Pastor, we do have a lot of people that are going based on, their childhood past. And sometimes a lot of parents don't want to take the blame or don't even want to acknowledge that their child is going through something, because every parent wants the best for their family, their children. They want to have them to be happy. And in most cases, they want to believe that they did something right, but it's not always like that.
Ms. Rachel, thank you so much. Now let's go to our following video and we'll be right back.
I'm realizing more and more about why I am the way I am. From when I was really little and I could hear my mum and dad arguing like about money or something. And I can't talk to them about that because all they want to talk about is how tender the chicken is. That's their idea of a deep chat. Every single time we're eating, someone invariably comes out with a comment about the tenderness of the meat. Mum was depressed, and I never really focused on that, but it's clear that she was, and I think that meant if I had a problem, that it was always a problem too much. And her and Dad were arguing all the time, which obviously doesn't help things. I think that's why I have these issues with confidence and this whole background of shame all the time, and probably why I do the OCD type stuff, and it explains drinking and explains drugs,
Chicken's very tender.
Extremely tender.
We don't talk about something other than the food. Because we come here every Sunday and we eat and all we talk about is the food. I've been reading this a lot, and I think it explains a lot about why things keep going wrong, why I can't start a new relationship, why work's all over the place. It's because I haven't received that bedrock of human love that everyone needs. Like,
Anyone for more vegetables?
Oh,
this is why I think me and Alice broke up in the end.
Alice? What are you bringing her in for?
Could open a bottle of wine if you prefer.
Ooh.
I think if I just had that confidence.
Confidence? What's that got to do with anything?
Would you like some more ice cream?
Started to see a therapist.
Why not a magician next?
God, Mum, it's not the Middle Ages. It's a normal thing to do. It's just good to have someone to actually talk to about how you're feeling.
You talk to him.
Have you been fishing any more this month, Ian?
No, I don't mean that.
Your Aunt Sarah was here the other night. Her eldest has just got into university.
I'm not saying these things to be mean.
Well, maybe you should think about it before opening your mouth.
I just think it's good to have a sort of like constructive, non-blaming conversation about the way you're feeling.
Should I put the telly on?
Now, put plenty of vegetables in here.
Yep,
Yeah, but make sure you eat them. You look a bit slim.
I will do.
Are you getting enough?
Yes, yes. Hey, man. Yeah, it was okay. Sort of. Yeah, we talked, but we just didn't really talk about that kind of stuff. Like, I just think that's probably not a conversation I'm going to have with my parents. Yeah, probably better if it's just me and you and therapist and maybe like that. Did get some pretty good chicken though. Very tender.
Do you think there's a difference between childhood trauma of men and women? For example, a father and a mother, or a daughter and a son?
I would say yeah. I think there are some differences between some traumatized between men and women.
Clearly, there is a difference in the trauma that men and women go through because emotionally and the supports that are around in society and that we have are different, and the outlets of how women are allowed to express their emotions and what they're going through are different from men. I would like to say that I don't think that there is enough supports for women or for men in society currently, especially for men, because we're always held to have this belief that we're supposed to internalize and, not express a lot of things. So I do believe that there's a difference.
Men and women are different, right? For example, when I was a child, I got traumatized from like being bullied. Like when I was an elementary school student, like in a physical way. But when it comes to women, if they got bullied by women, maybe they will be bullied in like hiding ways. How can I explain that? Like mental way, right? And they're not gonna hit them, right? So I think there are some differences between men and women.
Do you think that children understand when a parent goes through a trauma, so they base it on the child as well?
No, it's probably hard for them to understand. It's probably even harder for them to really take into their mind to really like process it, because they don't know what their parents are really going through in their day-to-day lives. They just see it from the inside out. They don't know about the outside in. So I would probably say it's a little bit harder. So maybe communication would be something that would help.
The parents should take responsibility and make sure they brought up their children in the right and proper way.
Do you think there is a way to help more men in this childhood trauma in a way that we can support them more?
I think the best way for men to be able to try to get through some of the trauma that they have and that they're dealing with is to honestly just find other groups of like-minded men, whether it be friends or whether you try to plan social events where there are men, whether they're parents, and they could relate to, trying to improve how they treat their children compared to how they were raised and the situations that they were in. So I think there are things that can be done. And yeah, I think whether it's a community or community-based initiatives or just groups of males on their own, but I do think that there are ways to get forward.
It depends, right? It depends like what kind of trauma they get. So I feel like, of course, people are willing to support people who are struggling to something, but it's very difficult to figure out who are traumatized.
I also think it's probably some on the parent and also on the child, just because the child has to cope with it by themselves. But the parent would probably lay the structure down to deal with it, or somehow they could help or get some therapy or something along the way like that.
I think there is not enough support. The kids need support. Your parents have to support your kids in every form and every way you can. Because you brought them in this world, and you should make sure everything is well taken care of with your kids and be there for them.
People blame their parents for the lack of teaching them economics. But my logic is, how do you expect someone who has a middle school equivalency in economics to teach you how to understand money and to basically give you a PhD at something they didn't even know themselves? We blame our parents for a lot of different things, but yet and still they only did what they were supposed to based on what they thought was right. So sometimes we put too much pressure on them to understand life when they was learning themselves. There's tons of things that we know that they didn't know. Now expect your children to know tons of things that you didn't know. That's called growth and evolution. In order to evolve, one must keep growing. So again, stop blaming your parents so much for what they didn't know. And understand it wasn't permitted and it wasn't shown. So now the knowledge is more accessible. So now you know more than you knew, or whether your parents know. So now you teach your children to be better. Stop blaming them because they didn't know. Don't let that go over your head.
And we're back with all of you. We have another caller, Antonio. Let's see if we can connect him right now. Antonio, can you hear us?
Hello, yes, I can. Hear you loud and clear.
Antonio, we're asking everybody the following about childhood trauma. To what extent do you think a parent is responsible for childhood trauma?
To what extent? Of course, it all depends on the situation. Depends on the person as well. I was hearing that guy talk right now. There's sometimes that some people, they don't know. They don't know how to take care of children. They don't know how to take care of the person. But of course, there's issues that as well that one is responsible to take care of the child, the way that they grow, the way that they think. Of course, it reflects on how the person is. So the extent is depending, how would I say this, on the situation.
Yeah.
Again, when it comes to emotional, when it comes to mental, physical as well. Because I know sometimes they didn't have a good childhood and they lash out on their child, they lash out on their children, saying things they're not supposed to, doing things they're not supposed to. So it varies on every type of situation.
Now, Antonio, usually when it comes to a child, a child is someone who physically can be defenseless, emotionally can be defenseless. Do you think that type of pain can actually help that child grow up to be stronger than what they are? Or do you think it's just a recipe for disaster?
I believe, to be honest, it could be a recipe for disaster. Because one doesn't, how do you say it? When they start living into the real world, when they start going to school, they start seeing their experience growing up, and they look into their household, it could be very disastrous. Because they start, unfortunately, children, they start comparing themselves. Yeah. They start comparing themselves to other people, to other children's lives that, for example, their dad picks them up. But them in their lives, their dad doesn't pick them up. You get me? So
Mm.
certain things could be very disastrous in the long run.
And Antonio, thank you so much for speaking your mind, for sharing your opinion. Have a good night, okay?
You too. Thank you, sir.
Take care. 877-785-8700. Mrs. Rachel, do we have the results of our poll?
Yes, we do, Pastor. So here are the results. So as you see, we do have it on the parents and childhood traumas. To what extent are parents responsible for childhood traumas? At the end of the results, we do have 42% saying 100 of the time parents are always responsible, and 58% saying 50% of the time other factors. So as you see, that is the end of our poll, and that's what everyone thought, and that's how we finished it, Pastor.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rachel. If you're watching us right now, and maybe you consider yourself somebody who has had this type of trauma, if you're somebody who's watching us right now, and you even say, I think I haven't been able to resolve certain issues growing up, or maybe you're a parent, and you even say, I don't really know what I'm doing. It's one of the things that Edith had said, you don't need money nor resources to be there for your child. But something that the Word of God shows us is the following. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I always remember certain moments growing up with my parents. I remember those moments where we had nothing to eat. I remember those moments where everybody went to bed starving. I remember those moments when everybody went to bed fighting. I remember those moments where we never got along. But the principles, the values of a hardworking man that my dad showed me is something that I have and I hold on to this day. The ability to persevere in prayer that I've learned from that man is something that till this day I put into practice. So if you're somebody who now has been affected, maybe because they weren't there when you were growing up, or maybe you're a parent trying to figure out your own life while you still have a kid, train them up in the right things, not in the things that are temporary, but things that really matter. Principles, values, morals. You have that opportunity. And one of the things that Antonio said that was very true, it can be a recipe for a disaster, because maybe you have become a parent who's aggressive, but it's not because that's inside of you. Maybe that's all you've ever seen. Maybe that's all you know. Or maybe like Rosa, a story right now that you're going to watch, somebody who comes from a dysfunctional family, somebody who grew up with an alcoholic father, somebody whose mother suffered domestic violence. And if this is you, whether you're in a dysfunctional family, whether you are that alcoholic father, or you are that mother who is suffering right now with domestic violence, first and foremost, we urge you, call us. We can help you. 877-785-8700. And the second, the most important thing, what we want to do for you now is pray, because God is capable of restoring your family. God is capable of placing peace inside of your home. So those years that you spend together, they're years that are completely blessed. Pay very close attention to Rosa's story, and we'll be right back.
Problems within myself that came about due to the family problems that I was going through and the problems that were going around me. My father, he used to drink. He had the problem with alcohol, and so he would spend actually all of his money in that addiction. And so most of the times there wasn't food at the house. We wouldn't have like clothes. That brought a lot of problems with my mom. They would always fight. He would hit her, and my mom took out that frustration on us, on her children. She would always scream at us. She would hit us. Anger started building inside of me because every single day I would see that situation in my house. I would see my parents fight. I would always, there wasn't one day where there was peace at home. It was a curse that happened in my family because not one marriage in the different generations in my family, no one was ever happy. The families were always destroyed. That addiction followed my father from his father. I started to believe it was something normal. Even though there was a chaos in my family, I thought it was normal. I would see it every day. I grew up seeing the same thing over and over again. So it became sort of like a routine, something I would see constantly, and it became normal to me. My mom and my sister were invited to come to the Universal Church. At that time, my sister was sick, and so she only had 3 months to live. So my mom accepted the invitation, and my sister was healed. After that, my sister invited me to come to the Universal Church, and coming here, I started listening to the Word of God, what the pastors would preach, all of the problems that I was going through, the problems in my family, the way I felt inside, the depression, the loneliness, and the addictions, everything that was going on in my life, all of that was due to a curse. And that's when I was able to understand that it wasn't something physical, it wasn't something that was normal, it was actually something spiritual, and I needed to overcome that, seeking the help of God. I started doing the chain of prayers on Fridays, so I could break that curse that was in my family. The first day I came here, I felt peace. So that's what actually made me start continue coming, because I remember I came on a Sunday and I felt different. The peace I've never felt in my life. I've never actually had peace because there was always problems. There was always fighting, and I always felt angry. But that day that I came, I felt calm. I felt peace. And so when I went home, everything, my point of view, the way I started seeing things, it changed. Because the word I heard that day, it actually changed my way of thinking and seeing things. My family today is a blessed family. There's peace inside our home. I could actually call it a home. We are able to communicate with each other without fighting, without screaming, without hurting each other. My dad was delivered from the addiction of alcohol. I'm happy to be part of the family that I am of now because I love them. We did have our differences in the past. We did have those problems, but it was due to that curse that was in our home, that was in our family. But now that it's been broken, my family was completely transformed. I know now that God loves me. And I know that no matter whatever I go through, He's always going to be there with me. He's going to be helping me. He's going to be guiding every single step that I take. Any decision that I take, He's going to be the one guiding it. And I know that I won't be able to fail because God is with me.
Lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He won't let my foot be moved. He who keeps me is the Lord, the one who keeps Israel. Will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is my keeper, He's the shade on my right hand. He keeps my soul, He protects me from all evil. He keeps my going out and my coming in. now on and forever. The Lord is my keeper. He's the shade on my right hand. He keeps my soul. He protects me from all evil.
Prepare a glass of water or get closer to your television screen. At this moment, we will have a special prayer to your name.
My God, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, for those who hear us, who watch us now and still, after so many years, hold trauma, scars from their past, maybe those scars and that pain that was physical now has become resentment, hatred. Maybe, my Lord, because of their parent who at the time was in their own type of pain, battling their own demons, this person, they were on the receiving end. It's not their fault, but my Lord, you are the one who can restore those bruises. I pray and I ask you, my God, in Jesus Christ's name, bless, consecrate this water, that when they drink of it, inside of them can be how your word has it, a river of living water. That, my Lord, is how I determine this person blessed. In Jesus Christ's name, and you who believe say, amen. Amen. Drink of this water now in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless all of you in Jesus' name. And if you want to put an end to this suffering, understand that it's in your hands. It can be unfortunate to go through what one has to go through in the family, especially being young, being innocent, being defenseless. But God can restore you. 2420 Dufferin Street here in Toronto. We're in the corner of Bowie Avenue and about a block and a half from Eglinton Avenue. That is how our building looks like. If you want, you can take a photo, you can take a screenshot, and you can save it. You can put in your GPS, whatever it can be. 2420 Dufferin Street. This Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're going to be here in the Gathering of Faith and Miracles. If you right now want to see that change, then mark your date, mark your calendar for this Sunday, because you're going to see the power of God in your life. All right. God bless all of you. Thank you for allowing us in your home. Until next time.
Join thousands of people every Sunday at 10 a.m. in one faith. Based on this word, again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. Matthew 18:19. Receive the 7 prayers.
I don't know how long I had that disease, but the way I found out is I had went to the doctor to have my annual physical. So they called me about the results and told me to get to the hospital because my sugar was so high that I was threatening a stroke. So I participated in drinking the blessed water. Faithfully, I did it every day. I just continued in my faith and coming to the church and fighting against it.
Deliverance.
I was a victim of witchcraft. My mother sacrificed me since I was young. I couldn't walk. I was paralyzed for a long time. I don't remember half of my life. I remember being in the hospital. It was King County Hospital. I remember that I had to learn how to walk. I had to learn how to write. I saw demons. People think that evil's not real. It is real. I went to a lot of churches, like 23 Christian church, and I never felt like I felt when I came to the Universal Church. But when I came to this ministry, from the very first time that I stepped through that door, I knew there was hope in this church.
Prosperity.
I had a business that was doing at one point rather well and went down substantially, and experienced just hard times trying to bring it up. I experienced also 3 deaths in my family: my mother, my father, my brother passed away. Then we had the recession, and I really never recovered from that. And it's still hard times, but since I've been coming to the church here, my business is starting to recoup. I see opportunities where my phone is ringing. I want this house built. I want this done. My business is starting to take off to another dimension.
Family.
I was about to separate with my husband, and during the time I was coming to church, I learned to forgive. And when I learned to forgive, I started working on my relationship with my husband. And when my husband never opened up to me, never told me what was going on with his life, until one day I got a knock on the front door, and it turned out to be the police. And I had to learn, okay, God, you are here. I learned through the church, through tribulations, you use your faith. And that's when I said, hey, that God is talking to me. This is a way I'm going to find a solution to my problem.
Love life.
And my husband and I were very happy, loving. Everybody in the neighborhood know us and always want their relationship to be like our relationship. Our relationship was an example that people wants to follow. Until one day I found out that my husband had someone else. And that turned me into a bitter and an angry person. Me surrendering my life to the Lord, I got baptized, was filled with the Holy Spirit. Now I have no hate. I'm not angry. I want to even save other people. Try to counsel other people who are going through problems in their marriage.
Encounter with God.
The suffering in my life, it started with me just basically having pain all over my body. And my mom took me to the doctor. They could not figure out what was wrong with me. I started having headaches, and the headaches get worse. It would go like from maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days. Then I started to have stomach pain. My whole body was in pain. And I just felt like something, just like a brick drop on my head. And I had that headache. It was so bad. And I was sweating. I felt like I was going to pass out. I wake up one Sunday morning and I'm coming to church, and I'm like, I'm not leaving the church today without giving my life to God. I'm going to baptize today. And I came to church. Service is finished. I got baptized, and I never looked back.
Temple of Miracles, 2420 Dufferin Street, Toronto. 2420 Dufferin Street, Toronto. And every Universal Church